Hi, Babushka. I've been thinking about how to tell the rest of the story of your grandma. And I've been busy working out there, just trying to keep things together, keep afloat of everything. The city is really trying to open up there. They want to work out there. And it gets overwhelming sometimes, but I'm making it through, and I hope you are too. I know that some of these stories that I've been telling you, it's a little bit overwhelming for you, and that's okay. You can go back, like I said before, and watch these anytime. And basically, too, these are helping me reevaluate stuff and get it out there, and then that way I can go back, because I have a lot of stuff written down, but later on it's going to turn into even smaller stories and stories within the stories that will have clip art and graphics, because I've been told too from other people, especially young people in the gay community and the straight community too, that what I experienced inspires them. And I hope you can use it in the future to inspire you as well. So let's get to this. Your grandmother, Sarah. This is the years of 1987 leading up to the fall of 1988. Part of me knows it still like the back of my hand. And part of me, it's still kind of jumbled up inside too. Just little bits and pieces. And that over the years was me overcoming the PTSD of it all. And then learning that the realization that I cannot depend on that side of my father's family to even talk about this stuff. And I've come to rely on my instincts and my experience as a youth. And I've talked to other adults about it. I've talked to counselors about it. They said I got through it because of a state of healthy fear and a state of survivalism, and I've learned too who my true allies are and the ones who are not, the do-gooders, the ones who like to look at something that's termed as a train wreck. They like to gawk at it and use it for their own advantage. That's some of the family friends or members of the family. And then some family members, they just wanted to bury it and move on. It was just too sad for them to contemplate. Okay, we're gonna do this. It began in 1987 with volleyball. I didn't want to play sports anymore. I wanted to study. I wanted to learn more about myself. And my way of dealing with the stress around me was through pen and ink drawings and calligraphy and my artwork. At that time, I had this crazy notion of starting a group, like an art club kind of thing, within the high school, and it kind of fell on my lap with my art teacher who had gone to the same technical school that I had gone to. But Mom wanted me to play volleyball so bad. She wanted me to accomplish that. I had tried it during her heart attack around 1985 in junior high, and I absolutely hated it. But I gave it a shot for her sake. That way she could come to the games and observe me and be proud of me. She took some photos. I still have them. I know you've seen some of them. And I got to know more of the girls. I had a lot of respect for the volleyball coach and the assistant. They were both lesbians. So was our physical education teacher. And they did have a group of girls who would hang out with them, probably for motivation and for protection. I wasn't sure what world I belonged to. I dated a lot of guys. I met a girl on the varsity. No, it wasn't varsity. She was on the JV team with me. Sometimes she would do the varsity stuff. She was transitioning over because she took it more seriously. But I knew that she had an attraction for me. We became really good friends, and she was a member, and her whole family, there were like a dozen kids, they were all members of the Catholic Church in that town. And I would listen to what she had to say about the church and how she loved it and how she felt like it was the right way. But for me, it wasn't the right way. I had more things to do with my life, and I wanted to study and explore. And I visited other kids' churches during this time. I dated some boys, fooled around a little bit, got too close to a dangerous boy because I was friends with his sister. Dangerous person. I ended up feeling very sorry for her. But I got a little bit too close to her brother. And I experienced what's called a date rape. Never told my mom about it. Never told a lot of other people about it. Just some young people that I knew. And then also a youth pastor in the Church of the Nazarene that I was starting to go to on a regular basis. It wasn't so much switching over to the Protestant faith. It was a group of young kids who belonged to that church, mostly boys, but a lot of good girls too. But we formed a strong alliance. And at this time, Consuelo had moved away to go back into hiding for protection of her mother. Later on, I saw Consuelo. She went to my school for about a year. The last year I was there, and there was so much going on in my mind, and I wanted to kind of keep the feelings that I had going on in my head away from her. I didn't want her to get involved in my drama or my demise. She had her own problems to deal with. But volleyball went well. Mom actually visited the school too 1 year for the history teacher who I admired. He was also the football coach. He was incredible. He was the first person I knew in my life that introduced me to the teachings of Karl Marx and that history. He stood in class at the pulpit like a preacher, and he quoted with a deep voice, "And the workers shall rise." It's a little bit out of the Communist Manifesto. And boy, did that ring a bell in me. Incredible man. He he wanted so much for everybody to have perfect scores. And he challenged me. And I proved to him that I wasn't such a ding-bell. And then later on he admired, what I had give to the table at the class, and he ended up wanting me to invite my mom to class to give her story about growing up in Nazi Germany. And she did. At that time, just seeing her around other people, I could tell that her health was starting to deteriorate. But she kept going, and she inspired people. The first year, we still had our hopes. We had lots of plans. Christmas was quiet. We just spent it with ourselves. She taught me the beginnings of making homemade candy. And you know how I love to make candy, fudge and truffles, things like that for Christmas. Peanut brittle. Yeah, all the things that you like. You wonder why I do that every year. Well, it's because the following year, 87, her and I had no Christmas. Her health started to fluctuate up and down, and it began to take a turn for the worst. They had misdiagnosed her, and I did not know this until after the whole thing went down from our main doctor. Wonderful man named Dr. Abbott. He was originally from England, and his two kids were a year younger than me, and they actually went to the parochial school with me. I used to play a little bit with his daughter Emily, but she was very shy. But what was really wrong with her body? Oh my God. When she took that terrible fall years before, not only did it screw up her knee, but there was a small microscopic piece of bone from her spine, and it hit on one of her nerves. That caused everything. And I think the physical and psychological abuse that she endured, especially the physical abuse from your Uncle Jack, accelerated it and made it worse. And looking back, this is my theory, and this is only from a young girl's point of view, but I've talked to other doctors and other people. Those actions against her probably led to the heart attack and a bunch of other things. It didn't have to happen that way. But looking back in hindsight, hindsight is only hindsight. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. And the more and more I tried reaching out to other relatives and friends of the family, even unfortunately your sister Jewel, who was busy with her own life and her husband. They wanted to just bury it. They wanted to just Pollyanna the whole thing and just say, well, that's just Mom. She'll get better. This is nothing new. But I saw day to day her health deteriorate. And I tried to balance work and school. Oh, by this time I was working, beginning part-time, and then it became later on full-time, my first paycheck job. And it was at a fast food place. It was fine. It was a steady paycheck, you know. And it was close by to where I lived. So it was okay. But I tried my best to balance all these things, along with going to youth group and working on my art. Those were my escapes. Those were my rock to lean on when dealing with all this stuff. But God, it was a juggle. It was a total juggle. And it seemed to me, going through that time, that every moment of my life was precious. You know, the good and the bad. I also had a reliable bunch of neighbors next door, an elderly couple and their grandson went to the same high school as me as well. He was a year older. But for some reason, between 1987 and 1988, her health deteriorated. And at the same time, the money ran out. She tried to keep it hidden from me. You know, as young people, we're usually not allowed to get involved in our parents' or our elders' financial stuff. Never allowed to look into the bank account, you know. I mean, it's their money and they're in charge of us. But I remember one day going to the bank with her. It was a drive up in the car. They had given her back the receipt of her balance, and I had seen it. It wasn't enough to live on. And she was angry at me for seeing it and for questioning her. She snatched it out of my hand, actually. I wish, looking back, that she would have been more honest with me. But she dealt with it the way she did, and there's no going back. So, I did that one session of volleyball. Made lots of friends. Made another friend, a girl named Jasmine, within the art club. She helped me get it going. She was kind of my right-hand girl, so to speak. And wonderful person, not perfect, little bit over flirtatious, even with older men. She had a boyfriend at the time who was 10 years or so older than her, who lived down in Eugene. And her dad was a real weird guy. He used to be a DJ up in Portland, very well known within his circle. But he was an oddball, and he was also abusive to his wife. She's a wonderful woman. But they would always brag about his DJing days, how he once interviewed John Lennon and some other celebrities. I just did not care. He creeped me out. He drank way too much, smoked way too much pot, and was obsessively too close to my friend Jasmine's nephew, actually. Him and the nephew lived in separate quarters that were set up like maybe a mother-in-law apartment connected to her house. But her and I would hang out, and we would talk about things. We would talk about religion and whatnot. Her mom was Catholic and actually worked at the Mount Angel Monastery. I'd go there sometimes with her and her mom to her mom's work, and we would hang out and talk to the young priests and the nuns there, and then the monks too. There were a few nuns, not a lot, but I was just kind of curious, and it helped me psychologically deal with my past. We would discuss theology, we would discuss a lot of things. And then her mom and my mom also became close, but not too close, but close and caring enough. So I'm going to school all the time, doing art all the time. I end up painting murals. I end up volunteering at the town library with my calligraphy. I redid all the calligraphy on all the drawers for their Dewey Decimal System. And then at school, a lot of the coaches and teachers, if they had awards to present to people, things like that, and they needed calligraphy, my art teacher would just hook me up first in line. And so I would do that work for them on my own time, you know. It was nice. And then also, I met a wonderful teacher who was head of the English department. And he was also in charge of the yearbook and the school newspaper and the theater there. So me and my friend Jasmine, we helped with some design and decoration for stage props and backgrounds, stuff like that. And he helped me a lot. That'll be later on down the road. Who else helped me? My youth pastor at the Nazarene Church. He didn't know everything about my family. I gave him just enough for him to know that I needed protection from my dad. And he was a good guidance counselor in a way. But he was so busy balancing out his life. He had a wonderful wife. Oh my gosh, what a wonderful lady. They had a little baby girl at the time, about 2 years old, and then she was pregnant with another baby on the way. And I didn't realize this, but talking to my high school sweetheart lately, I realize now that this youth pastor had replaced a youth pastor who had started trouble there. And he took on this brood of kids, and I became part of that. He took us to the best trips ever. And my first venture up to Seattle was because of him. And for some reason, on the way back down, there was so much trouble with the bus. But we were stranded for a while and had to spend a couple nights at a church while he got the bus repaired with his wife and little one with him. Incredible. But we all cared about each other and loved each other so much. It was great. And Mom loved the idea of me coming up to Seattle. Originally, that was our goal. She wanted to move up here to be closer to her twin brother and his family, you know, so they could be earshot from each other and start our life anew again. That was the end game. We'd talk about it for hours and hours and hours when we'd be up late at night. But those late night talks disintegrated as her health got worse. She slept a lot more. She was in a lot more pain all the time. Sometimes I could not understand what she was saying. And then balancing out school and work and trying to keep the house clean. Well, the house got a little bit cluttered, and then it got a lot cluttered toward the end because I couldn't balance it all. There was just no way. And then also, when we first lived there, everything in the house was bright. She kept the lights on, you know. After a while, the lights became darker and darker and darker. And then, as I made more friends and they would want to come over and visit, she was more into, they can't come in. Y'all can go outside or you can hang out at their place. But she was separating herself for some reason. And then it all started to dawn on me as to why, but I really couldn't put my finger on it. Not until we missed the following Christmas. She was so sick. She went to the hospital and then came back. They gave her new medication. I didn't even talk about it. It wasn't even brought up at school. Wow. You know? I also met a nice young man. Actually, we shared the same bus stop together. It'd be just him and I. And he also went to the Church of Nazarene. Tim. We would talk about a lot of things together, and we would watch the sun rise in the morning together, and sometimes we could see Venus along with the sun as the morning star. Another important figure in my life, you know. I think of these three men and what they did for me to get through these moments. And to me, they were angels. So in later videos, I'm going to have 3 videos about each one of them and how they influenced me and did a lot for me. Kept me from wanting to die. You know? Kept me going. But, so, comes around through the summer. I'm working all the time. This is the summer of 1988. I'm 15. Hanging out with my friends, working all the time. We have trouble with the bills. We lost electricity one time, and I got one of my neighbors to help me get the lights back on. She became more quiet, more distant. I would try and help her with her health, feeding her, making sure she took enough water, massaging her leg, and all of that, massaging her back, and trying to find answers. There were no answers. It was just inevitably going to happen. But the way it happened was so sad. Also, before all this went down to, about during the time I was raped by that dog. It's okay. I moved on from that. And karma does work sometimes too. I might bring that up in a future story. But my mom got a phone call from my uncle, who lived across the street from us when she was married to my dad in Humbleton. We hardly never talked to the guy. We weren't allowed to. Mom had talked to him briefly on occasion during the beginning of her marriage. But this is like 18 years later. He calls her out of the blue. My dad, my oldest brother, and others are still quite angry. Apparently, my dad was going around the neighborhood, his neighborhood, and talking at the tavern and other places about how angry that she had defied him, that she had wanted a divorce. And yet, he's the one who filed first. Try and put that in an explanation. I don't know. But Uncle Jim was saying to Mom that John was trying to hire someone to kill her. Maybe this led to her not wanting people to come into the house, because one of the few nights my friend Jasmine was over, and in my bedroom were rummaging around in my bathroom in the cupboard up above. We had to stand on the toilet to reach it. I forget what I was looking for. Maybe it was lotion, or trying to find, I don't know, girl stuff, shampoo, whatever. I was trying to look for something. I found a handgun. I reach up and I grab it. And I'm like, what the hell is this? It's loaded. The safety's on, but it's loaded all the way. And my friend's looking at me, and she's kind of laughing like it's a joke, wanting to look at it. And I'm like, oh no, you gotta go home. After she went home, I had it out with Mom. Like, what is this for? How dare you? How dare you? This is so awful because somebody could have come into my bathroom. Somebody could have rummaged around looking for toilet paper, what have you. Eddie could have come over. Oh my God. He would have taken it, you know, and could have used it. He was known for pointing guns at other kids in Humbleton, you know, along with his bullying and, you know, abuse of other young people at that high school. And he was never properly disciplined for it. Mom broke down crying. She had told me that her brother, Uncle Sash, had given her that gun, that he had come down from Bremerton down to Burnwood Special just to give it to her because of Uncle Jimmy saying, they're going to try and kill you. They're talking about it. Which is ironic because a year prior, our house was broken into and fiddled with. Nothing was taken. We could tell the house had been broken into because someone had figured out a way to get through one of the storm windows. And both of our kitty cats were outside, which never happened. So we knew something was up. The police did do a thorough investigation and took fingerprints all over the place. But Uncle Sash, who was skilled with guns, had taught Mom how to use it, and he felt it was the best way. I was against it. And she promised me that she would have him, you know, drive back down and retrieve it out of sight, get rid of the whole thing. And that calmed me down. But I did put all these pieces together, and I did remember there were times when I'd be out in the backyard at night or looking through windows, and it did seem like somebody was around spying on us at times. I don't know. Looking back on it, I'm still trying to piece it together at times. But that's when she started slowly to cave in within herself. I think she was giving up. I would write things down in my journal. And I would also write down things in school, in class. And that English teacher I told you about, Mr. Aaron, Babushka, you know who he is. Because later on, 10 years down the road, him and I fell in love with each other. You know, it could have worked, but that's another story, and I'll tell you in one of the other videos. But he saw through my writing all these signs of Mom getting more ill and things that I was having to deal with. And as a professional teacher, he was one of the few, besides my youth pastor, Brad, and besides Tim, who are actually there for me as a human being. It happened so quick. After the summer, Mom got us all together, including Dad. She worked with a surveyor guy at Dad's work, who actually would be hired, besides taking photographs of all the roads and whatnot, for those areas in Salem, Oregon. He would be hired by my dad or my mom to take like photos of us as a family in the past. He also took all of our senior photos when we would graduate. He would take my senior photo in the future for me too. But she hired him, and he worked with her, and he got us all together dressed up. And at the time, Uncle Jack, my oldest brother, he was taking a leave from the military school he was going to, and he was in his full uniform, his cadet uniform. So at that time, oh gosh, I'm trying to remember what month. Yep, it was July, August. All of us together as a family. Even some photos of her and Dad together. Kept it professional. No arguing, no nothing. And Dad seemed a little bit more empathetic toward her. He was real quiet around me. I still didn't really want to talk to him. I did it for her. But for some reason, she wanted us all together. Very rare. And she had lost a lot of weight, too. I can only look at a few of those photographs to this day. But when I see her, she was still beautiful. But she had lost so much weight. I don't know what it was. If it was due to the medication she was taking, maybe the insulin. I don't know. But anyways, so I go to school. It's my junior year. Thing seems to be, what it is. Month goes by. It's okay. Then October. Then towards the end of October, it's her birthday on the 27th. I give her my last gift. I'd found at this consignment store a dress for her, and it's her favorite color of coral orange with a little bit of lace. Very posh. I don't know. It was a good deal. I knew it was her color and her size. And it made her feel good. She was happy. But she was in and out a lot, mostly sleeping. There were times, too, when I would have to come home early from a game, or I would worry myself to death if I was out on a date or doing something with Bible study or the youth group or even at work. I would come home, she'd be out of it again, laying on the floor or what have you, and I'd have to get her to come to. Her birthday passes. I'm scheduled to work. This one I know like the back of my hand. It was October 5th, 1988. Around 9 a.m. in the morning. I'm up. I don't have to be at work till later on that night, around 4 p.m. Mom's not responding. And I'm shaking her to wake. Not responding at all. Now she doesn't seem skinny. All of her body seems a little bit bloated and a shade darker than what it should be. I panic, but I stay calm. I go next door to the elderly couple I told you about that lived next to us. Their daughter is a nurse, and she happens to be over there that day visiting. And I beg her to come over and have a look at Mom and give some kind of evaluation on what to do and how to go about it. We look around the daybed where Mom was there, where she usually slept. She helps me look underneath the bed. We're searching at everything. And she's like, do you realize she's not taking this medication when she should be? And then I start pulling out bags of candy where half of it or more has been eaten. And then I find a bottle of half-drunk whiskey. Mom was not the type to drink at all. And then the nurse, she starts going through more of the medication, checking the dates, checking the this, the that, and the other thing. And she's like, you're going to have to call the ambulance. Your mom quit taking her insulin shots, and she could be going through a diabetic coma. And then it dawned on me that maybe during those times when I'd find her on the floor, at least during that time, could have been forms of coma. So I get on the phone with the ambulance, tell them what's going on. They say they're going to be over as soon as possible. After I'm done with the phone call, I call Brad, my youth pastor. His wife answers the phone, but then he picks it up. He dismisses his task at hand, and he's like, I'm going to be over right away for you. And then, at the same time, I call my dad. My dad's like, well, I don't know. I'm busy right now. I don't want to talk about these things. I was so angry at him. Why? You know? I mean, the least he could have done, because he had that day off, was to try and come over and help me and be there for me. You know, be there for her. It's awful. So, eventually, the ambulance does arrive. It's around noon at that time. I was keeping an eye on the clock. It's noonish. And with them are two wonderful police officers. I tell them everything about her health and the situation. Well, not everything about the family, no way. But I think they kind of knew, because they had known the one officer I was telling you about, the son-in-law of the mayor of Humbleton. And I'm sure rumors get around. But they're there for me, and also, right afterwards, a car pulls up, and there's two social workers. And they go into the house, look around, they come out, they say because the house was cluttered and a bit unkept and messy, my mom was seen to them as an unfit parent. And she may go to the hospital, but when she comes back, I'm not going to be there, and she's going to lose custody of me, and they're going to place me in foster care. Immediately, the cops intervened, because I protested. And the cops said, no, you're not going to get involved in this one. In the meantime, we are going to be Belly's temporary guardians until her mom gets back on her feet, and we'll help her figure out what she needs to do. And they both looked at me and they said, you know, you're a good kid. You're responsible. You're working. Did you ever think about becoming emancipated in the future? Just if worse comes to worse. If there's a worst case scenario here, which we doubt. We're sure everything's going to be fine, but we're going to be here for you. So if your mom has to spend more time in the hospital to recover, we would like to be your temporary guardians in the meantime. And I jumped to it, and my youth pastor was all for it. And the youth pastor actually asked in a demanding fashion that the social workers go away, that they were not needed, as my worst nightmare was to be taken away. And how dare they? They didn't know anything about the family. Just something in my head told me that this would be a wrong road to go down. So, as the ambulance people, the EMTs, are in the house, when they take Mom out on the stretcher. It was the youth pastor and the 2 police officers. They covered me. They covered my face. They shaded me from seeing her. They felt that it would be too emotional for me to see her in that way. And they carried her off. I should have known it was coming. You know? Oh, and going back, before this Saturday, Jasmine was over at my place that Thursday night. We were sitting out on the sidewalk on the curb in front of my place. It was hot out. And we're up gazing at the stars, smoking cigarettes, talking about how something might happen, or we could feel it in the air, that there were going to be changes, or something like this or that was going to happen. I think she was daydreaming, to be honest, about how she wanted her junior year to be. Maybe she was thinking about boys. She was always constantly thinking about boys. For me, it was a gut feeling that something was wrong with Mom, of course. After she went away, she went home, there was a little wooded area. And Tim out there, yeah, we had a conversation about this not too long ago. A wooded area on the other side of the houses. On the other side of it was a field. But it was a great place to go to meditate or find alone time or to go out with friends. It was beautiful. I went out there that night for a few minutes in the dark. It was only a block away from me. It was a great place to hide, to kind of collect my thoughts, get them together. And I remember sitting on a branch, like a fallen tree branch, a huge one, like a log, and kind of sat, meditating, looking into the dark, looking into, all the shrubs, all the branches and leaves, looking into the darkness. And I remember turning around, and right nearby me was a little owl on a branch, kind of doing a side step back and forth, kind of observing me and turning his neck slowly, slowly, slowly. So owls, they can turn their neck so far, it's almost like they're turning their whole head around. Creep me out. And then I hear a rustle behind me. It's another owl. And they're small. They're about the size of your doll here, Babushka. And then I look above me. There's another owl, flying from one branch to another. I ran home. Now I look back and I see it as a sign. Because years prior, when I was a little girl, my grandpa Ed showed me in his barn a huge barn owl, because the boys were talking about it, and I was afraid to look at it. I was only about 7 years old at the time. But he showed it to me with his flashlight and had me focus on it. It was up in the rafters above some bales of hay. And he told me that when you see an owl, it can be a sign of something. Even a sign of life or a sign of death. I actually put that down in my journal. It was one of the last entries in that particular wide-ruled journal. So, they take Mom away. Cops look around my place. They're like, you guys have had a lot to deal with. You've had a lot going on with your life. You've been burning the candle at both ends. But we can hook you up with some resources. You know, we can find people who can help you. And the youth pastor agreed. And they're like, so what are you going to do? You know, are you going to keep busy? Do you want us to take you anywhere? Do you want us to send over somebody to check up on you later? Like, I'm going to work. I have to work tonight at 4. I have to go to work. I have to keep things going. Like, don't worry, I can take care of all this stuff here on my own. I'll be fine. And they're like, okay. But they told me during their free time, in between their shifts, they would come around periodically. And I thought that was wonderful. Wonderful men. So, I stay ultra focused. I go to work that night. Everything's fine. Halfway through my shift, about 8 p.m., I was due to clock out at 10, maybe 11. So a little bit more than halfway through my shift. The officers show up along with the pastor. I'm at the counter, and the officers go straight to the assistant manager, which was fine. She was a controlling bitch. And didn't like me for some reason. I don't know why. But they said, you know, Belly's got to go home now. She didn't argue it one bit. She probably thought I was in trouble. Not true at all. But one of them reaches over to grab my hand over the counter. And he said, you know, we talked earlier today about emancipation. I'm like, yeah, I remember. And he said, well, you better think about it now because your mom just died. There's something about shock when it hits you and how it affects the blood flow. I could feel part of me floating. But I kept telling myself, as my mom and I would tell each other, you know, when we would make candy together or do a project together, that everything's going to be okay. And so I kept telling myself in my mind, everything's going to be okay. My pastor intervened, and he assured the officers that he was going to give me a lift home, which he did. Which was wonderful. And he said his goodbyes. He expected me not to be at church the next Sunday. And he also expected me not to be at school the following Monday. And that, you know, he'd keep tabs with me, let my boyfriend, Tim, and the others know what had happened. That night I was up ironing clothes and listening to the opera of Madame Butterfly and crying. I wanted to keep going. I slept. I slept for about 4 or 5 hours. I did, before I slept, get on the horn with my sister Jewel. And then I called my in the closet lesbian friend from volleyball. I called her Patty, Patricia. And I told her, are you going to Catholic church the following morning, tomorrow morning? And she's like, yeah, I'll take you. She had been wanting me to go back to the Catholic church for some time, probably to be around her. But I knew that my English teacher was a bishop at that church, and he had been preparing me for this moment in his own way. I wanted him to see me. I wanted him to know that I needed his help too. I needed to keep going. So I went to Mass that morning. Later on, I found out that all the women at the Nazarene church were up front on their knees praying for me and praying for Mom. That meant so much to me. But that's how it happened. Jewel came over the following night dumbfounded. First thing she wanted to do was drink wine coolers and go through all of Mom's things. And she did. While I kept going to school, her concern was the money and the antiques. That'll be another future story. To me, oh, the money. There was no money to be had. And the antiques, well, they're only things. And you move on. Looking back at it, at all of this to do, Mom had so many battles in her life at that time. And I think she was in too much pain to keep going. Some people can evaluate it as suicide. I think she was just ready to go. She did not want to deal with the pain anymore. I don't see of what she did as a sin at all. It was her choice. And looking back at it, I think in her mind, she knew that by doing this, in her hopes, it would lead me on to a better life. The life that she wanted to give me and herself, but she was unable to do. So, I don't know, I still go through it in my mind at times, but I'm cool with it. I love her, I look back on those precious moments together. Some of the worst and best times in my life, because her and I communicated on a level that my siblings did not. And she told me a lot about family secrets and things. It's kind of like her dying words in a way, but just over, instead of, a few minutes or a couple of hours at a bed, it was over a span of maybe 2 years. And those memories, she told me, I have them close in my heart. And it's kept me going. I know you changed your name from Sarah, and that's okay. You're a Belle like me, and that's fine too. But I did name you after her for a reason. So, she meant so much to me. To this day, too, I'm afraid of owls. I don't know. And to this day, too, if I see an ambulance or hear a siren, I jump a little. I don't know. I'm a lot better than maybe the way I was 10 years ago. And who knows what's going to happen in the future. I do know that she was young. She was only 46, 47. I'm older than that now. And I'm going to keep on going. One of my elders, actually years ago, Babushka, you're going to think this is wacko and crazy. She told me that she expected me, like some of the other relatives on my dad's side. She said, "You're going to live to be 101. She goes, "I know it. You're like that." So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how I take care of my health. Lessons learned. But remember, Babushka, I love you. And again, you don't have to watch this. Maybe you'll watch it down the road, or you can watch it in segments. But remember how much I love you. And please don't forget to ring the bell. Goodbye.